Solo, a Star Wars story about and featuring the origin story of Han Solo is now officially out, and depending on what you're looking for in a Star Wars movie these days, your opinion of this movie will vary. Also, before I continue any further, this review will contain major spoilers, so I highly recommend you see the movie first before watching any more of this video. Got that? Alright, there was your warning. Now let's begin. So, Solo, a Star Wars story is a movie that looks to answer all the questions that no one asked for, taking us back 10 years before the events of A New Hope, to see Han Solo's rise from the slums of Corellia to becoming a renowned smuggler and owner of the Millennium Falcon. It had a lot of problems during its production phase, and that does show in different areas of the movie, which results in an overall awkward pacing and feel throughout your watch. Some scenes that you feel should have a lot more emotion come off as being more lighthearted, while a couple scenes afterwards, the movie suddenly takes a 180 and you're left there sitting going, wait, what? You could tell this movie was mashed together by 3 different directors, and that's not really a good thing. It does, however, have some great things to it though, like fantastic world building that's been lacking in the sequel trilogy, and the humor was on point as well. Again, unlike the sequel trilogy, the humor in Solo was a lot more classic Star Wars than Marvel. The music was alright, but I do wish it could have had some guitar riffs thrown in there like the teasers did. That would have given the music some character in my opinion, than it being your generic run-of-the-mill Star Wars music, which isn't a bad thing at all, but it could have been better. Also, the constant references to both the canon lore and EU here and there were really fun. This was like the first Star Wars movie of the Disney era to do this, and I loved every bit of it. We really do need to see this continued in the other Star Wars movies. The references to Bossk, Aurra Sing, the Pikes, Terras Kazi, and so on were an awesome treat for the hardcore fans, which unfortunately will be missed by the more casual film goers. Also, seeing Maul show up at the very end was a very nice touch. But I felt the impact of seeing him was at a loss, for me at least, because I know his fate is decided in the children's TV show, which I kind of now wish he never did appear in Rebels, just so the mystery of how Maul's story will continue on from Solo, and maybe become a villain in the Obi-Wan standalone movie, which, well, unfortunately thanks to Rebels, that won't be happening. My 2 favorite scenes have to be the spaceport on Corellia and the fight on Mimban. The spaceport because it had a lot of tension and suspense. Not to raise any suspicion, you have no idea whether both of them will make it. It really reminded me of something I'd see in a World War II movie, with 2 runaway Jews trying to escape the Nazis at a train station unnoticed. While the Mimban scene was something completely different. I love the World War I trench warfare vibe it had, and it was a war scene I'd never think I'd ever see in a Star Wars movie before, but boy did I like it. The characters and casting for the most part was fine. I thought Chewie, Beckett, Kira, and Dryden Voss were great, especially of what they had to work with. Ehrenreich as Han Solo was also a pleasant surprise. I waited until the movie before reserving an opinion on him or Lando, as I thought that was only fair. Ehrenreich did have the mannerisms of Han, and there were even a few moments where he sounded like Han, which I dug. So I came into the movie thinking I'll probably not like his portrayal as Han, and came out thinking, that wasn't all that bad. But yes, there is a but. I still think getting Anthony and Gruber would have been a lot better choice. Despite the mannerisms, Ehrenreich just didn't look and sound like Han Solo for the most part. Ehrenreich's facial and physical structure is just too different, and if I were to listen to him in the movie while being blindfolded, I wouldn't be able to tell that he's supposed to be Han Solo. As well, Han here also felt a little bit too smart and clever for my liking, which is just the polar opposite of the Han we know from Episode 4, who's not really the brightest bulb in the room, but he always made up for that with his overt confidence. He was also a sleazebag and a scoundrel, such traits that a lot of people loved Han for, but this young Han did not possess at all. He was just too much of a goody two-shoes at times. It was weird. Not to mention he's also too short to be Han as well. Oh, and I also don't care for the excuses. Oh, and Gruber is only an impressionist. We don't need an impression here. We need an actor for this role, blah 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 blah. Yeah, no. Last time I checked, this isn't a reboot of the Han Solo character, so an impression of Harrison Ford Solo is definitely needed. It's the same reason you see classic characters like Winnie the Pooh, Mickey Mouse, and so on constantly getting different actors throughout the years that can do an impression of them that was made by the original actor. The original actor is what it's all based off of, and Harrison Ford is Han Solo. No two ways about it. So if you don't like that idea, then make a movie about a whole new smuggler character, or even a young Dash Rendar movie. If you're gonna do Solo, and you've got someone available that looks and sounds the part, take advantage of that. And Gruber is as well an actor too. He showed his acting chops by voicing the new Joker in Telltale's latest Batman game, where he brought in a fresh but believable take on the Joker. Not to mention Disney's loaded with cash. They could have easily hired an acting coach on set to help Gruber out if needed, and oh wait, they already did that with Ehrenreich. But like I said, I don't mind Ehrenreich as Solo and thought he did an alright job. But throughout the movie I just kept forgetting that I'm supposed to be watching Han Solo, because he looks nothing like him. And I think that kind of took me out of the movie at times. It kind of felt like that scene in Thor Ragnarok, where Thor arrives on Asgard and sees a play featuring him and Loki with actors that are supposed to look like them but clearly aren't them. Oh, and before I forget, yeah, I hated that whole part about Han getting his last name Solo from some random Imperial old fart who thought he was being clever. That part was so unnecessary and just made me cringe, thinking, did they really just do what I think they did? And later on in the movie, Han tells Lando aboard the Millennium Falcon that he had a dad that worked in a factory on Corellia. Which, okay, is that a complete oversight by the writers here? So Han did have a last name as he knew his dad. Because I'm pretty sure his dad had a last name, but yet he tells the Imperial that he doesn't have one, so he's given one and he keeps that last name for the rest of his life. It makes no sense whatsoever. Am I the only one seeing this here? Now let's talk about Lando. As a big Lando fan, I'm probably in the minority here, but I really did not like Glover as Lando. There are moments that, sure, just like Ehrenreich, where he did sound a bit like Lando, but mostly all I heard and saw was just Donald Glover trying to act cool. He didn't have that charm and vibe that Billy Dee brought to the table as Lando, and Glover's Lando overall didn't feel like Lando to me one bit. He was much more like an exaggerated cartoon version of Lando, not subtle at all, something that Billy Dee was really good at. It also goes without saying that, well, at least to me, Glover doesn't look like Billy Dee Williams either, like at all. The facial structure's completely different smile, the eyebrows are too close to each other, almost like a unibrow. Seriously, it just felt like someone in the casting department had a racist thought and went, hey, since all black people look the same, let's just cast the most popular young black guy in Hollywood right now and no one will be able to tell the difference, ha 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 ha. Yeah, no, just no. Give me someone that actually looks like the man he's supposed to portray. Even Algie Smith looks more of a convincing younger Lando than Glover, and that's just a name off of the top of my head here. If they had thousands of people auditioning for the role of Lando, there's no way Glover had the best resemblance to Billy Dee. Not to mention that whole thing of him finding droids sexually attractive was just about the dumbest thing I've ever heard in a Star Wars movie. I wasn't a fan of Jonathan Kasdan making Lando pansexual, but I thought, oh well, as long as it isn't shown, mentioned, or referenced in the movie, it's not canon. But nope! They had to stick it in there, just because. Lando was always the ladies' man, the smooth-talking pimp in space. Not some weird dude who finds a bunch of buckets and bolts sexually exciting and sleeps with dudes as well. Completely unnecessary. If you so badly want pansexual characters like that in Star Wars, then by all means create new characters. I'm not against having characters that are pansexual in Star Wars, I mean it makes sense, it's a big galaxy. There's bound to be a lot of people like that. My main gripe is just don't force that kind of stuff upon already pre-existing characters that we all know and love. I'm sure the LGBT community wouldn't be thrilled with the idea of a character they always knew to be gay to suddenly become straight just because that's what's popular nowadays. I mean, what's next now? Are they gonna change Lando's gender to female and call him Landina? With the way things are going right now, I wouldn't be surprised if that's the case. Oh, and there's also L3, which was also completely unnecessary. She was loud, obnoxious, and annoying. Lando's excuse of not wiping her clean due to the important files she had was weak, as evident of what happens later on in the movie. So I'm not sure why the Kasdans and Howard thought that having L3 the way she is was a good idea for the movie. And the funny thing is, the first scene that we meet and see L3, I was fine with her character. But then the whole droid rights thing just kept going on and on and on, dragging along with each and every time she would say or do anything. She was essentially an SJW bot in this movie. But then again, she was so over the top, I can't tell if Lucasfilm was maybe parodying hardcore SJW culture through her. Which, if that's the case, then that doesn't make sense given how far left-wing Lucasfilm is. But, yeah, I hated L3 and throw her into the same cage that Jar Jar Binks and Rose inhabit. Thankfully, unlike those characters, L3 doesn't stick around for much of the movie, so that's at least a positive there. There's also Enfys Nest, who's a really cool and mysterious character, already wrecking shop in her first appearance during that train heist. She's awesome and has that Boba Fett kind of vibe to her, which keeps you interested until, well, Enfys goes from being this badass female villain character to some little black or mixed ginger girl. Not intimidating at all, and only left me with questions on how a 12-year-old girl was able to take out an ace like Beckett with such ease. It made no sense whatsoever, and what can I say, I didn't like the reveal. The twist that she's not a baddie but a goodie also was meh, and I'll leave it at that. For me, out of every character in Solo, Jon Favreau's Rio was my favorite. I enjoyed him the most and thought he was a really good comedy relief character that added to every scene he was in. Just too bad he got taken out so early in the movie. I would have loved to see him take part in the Kessel Run. As well, I ended up liking Emilia Clarke's character Kira a lot more than I thought I would. She wasn't perfect, but she did keep us on our toes throughout the movie, constantly teasing and making us intrigued about her dark past. And then that whole ending. Oh wow. She's the snitch? No wait, she's actually betraying Han still. No wait, she's actually betraying Dryden. No wait, she can't be trusted and ends up abandoning Han in the end. I like that. Wasn't expecting so many twists and turns, but I liked what we got. Chewie was also great, but what gets to me is all this talk and hype before the movie about Chewbacca getting most of the spotlight here over Han, to the point that the movie should have been called Chewbacca, a Star Wars story instead, and all that nonsense because of the huge role he has here. Like, what huge role are you talking about? Other than his and Han's first scene together and the mission on Kessel, Chewie barely did anything in the movie other than just be a glorified background character. I felt disappointed about that as I was expecting more Chewie. The scene where he and Han first met I liked for what it was, but I wish they had met differently, more so to what was in Legends. Han only rescued Chewie not because he cared and felt bad about him, but rather just to save his own butt. Had he not been thrown into Chewie's pit, he would have never cared to actually save him. And when he did save him, there's never any mention of the life debt either. That was strange for the Kasdans to omit that from the script. Ah right, and that whole part of Han trying to speak Shuruk, which was not only cringeworthy, but also made no sense. As, think about it. When the heck does an orphan thief living in the slums of Corellia ever need to learn Wookiee speak, and even then, how would he when there were no Wookiees there either? Besides, I don't know about you, but I don't see Lady Proxima enrolling Han in the Corellian University to learn Shuruk, especially out of all the languages in the galaxy. I just didn't buy it when he was like, "Oh hey, Wookiee Beast, guess what? I magically speak your language too, whoop-de-doo." It was far too all convenient for my taste. Also, what's up with those Wookiees that Chewie saves on Kessel? I assumed that one of them was supposed to be Mala, his wife, but it's never made clear in the movie. Although I think one guy did yell out her name, Mala, just before she and Chewie parted ways. So who knows, I'll have to see that part again just to be sure. Now let's talk about Kessel, since we're on the subject. In short, I liked what I saw from it. The grime and active slave labor all over the planet, it's exactly what I imagined a real-life Kessel would look like. What I didn't like was the poor excuse for a Pike that was Quay Tolsite. He was supposed to be a Pike, but looked nothing like one. For starters, the mechanical hands, the lack of a long neck and head, and the language he spoke sounded nothing like the Pikes from the Clone Wars series. And what was up with his henchmen wearing Rebel Pathfinder helmets? I know Ron Howard was reusing props from Rogue One for this movie, but this was a little bit too silly. It got to the point where I was surprised that he didn't even make these guys wear a Death Trooper helmet either, just for good measure. I mean, why not, right? The Kessel Run scene itself was good, but when it ended, I was somewhat underwhelmed, like, was that it? Besides, there was no mention or explanation of parsecs throughout the whole scene. So my question is, who was keeping count on how many parsecs it took Han to do the Kessel Run? Oh, and can someone please tell me what's up with this weird racist pattern of Lucasfilm creating these special ethnic desert planets in each anthology movie? In Rogue One, they introduced Jeddah, a desert planet of all Asian humans. And in Solo, we now have Saravine, a desert planet of all black humans. Okay, so is Lucasfilm trying to tell us that these desert planets are where all the Asians and blacks in Star Wars come from? Am I the only one disturbed by this? Might just be me, but it felt pretty racist. Now, if in the next Star Wars standalone movie we get another desert planet that has all Hispanic or brown people on it, then yeah, this definitely won't be a coincidence. Next, let's talk about Han's Golden Dice in the Sabacc game. I enjoyed the game itself a lot, but was disappointed that the Golden Dice weren't used at all, as they were originally supposed to be the dice that Han won the Millennium Falcon from Lando with, which is why they were so important to him in the first place. They were his good luck charm. Yet, they weren't used to win the Falcon in this movie. So what the heck makes them so special then? Because they played a minor role in The Last Jedi? And where in the movie was Tag and Bink either? Ron Howard made a big deal showing us that they're gonna be in the movie, yet they weren't anywhere to be found. I'm assuming their part probably got deleted, which is a major bummer. And speaking about deleted scenes, but what about that whole Imperial recruiter scene from the first teaser? You know, the one that goes, "So you want to make a difference? Trust me, you'll love it." I was so looking forward to that scene and the whole process of how it's like to join the Empire. And it ended up not being in the movie at all. So yeah, that sucked a lot. But anyways, enough of all the ramble. Yeah, I do wish we could have seen more of Han's time in the 3 years he was in the Empire, but I still enjoyed the movie for what it was despite a lot of the disappointments and cringeworthy stuff that was spread across the 2 hours of runtime here. My general feelings leaving the theater were just meh. It was a fun but predictable movie that had some boring parts to it. Not the worst Star Wars movie out there, but definitely not the best. Was it necessary to tell the origin story of Han Solo? Heck no. Was it a bad thing that it came out? No, not really. I thought after The Last Jedi, it was good to have a lighter adventure movie like this that brought back that old school Star Wars feeling. And totally, I would be down to see a sequel for this movie that includes the likes of Jabba, Boba Fett, and hopefully more scenes involving the Empire. But what did you all think about Solo, A Star Wars Story? Agree with any of the points I made, or do you fully disagree with everything said in this video? Let me know in the comments down below. This is N7 from SYLO, signing off.